What's up? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe. And on the phone line, I've been listening to this guy for 10 years now, so I cannot believe he is on my show. The one and only Johnny Dare is on Hoppe Hour. What's up, bro?
What's up, brother Ryan? Man, how cool is this, man? Thanks for the invitation, man.
So I first found you. I'm a radio geek. I'm from Chicago, and I used to look up radio shows. And I just found yours about 10 years ago online. And to me, I feel like your show gets better each day because it seems like, not that you don't care, but a lot of shows are afraid to be outspoken. And you're just the same dude as you were years ago.
Well, listen, you got to be honest, right? Like, that's the great failure of all radio, when you succumb to whatever you want to call the cancel culture, but it's always been there. That cancel culture, when I started there, like, if you do this, you won't have any of that. You know, if you do this, and all you can be is who you really are. The fake shows don't last long, and you can see it throughout history.
Why do you think shows always go for the fake angle?
I think because they're trying to invent something. You know, you go, what do people want? It's like a band that tries to write a hit song that's not really them. You got to be you, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I will tell you, real always pays off.
What was the angle that you brought to the radio when you first began, when it came to being real? Like, did you sort of look at the situation and just go, I'm going to be real the whole time?
I wish I could tell you that I was that smart. You're gonna have to excuse me 1 second, buddy. I got a brand new puppy. I literally found on an island, and he's only 6 months old. And when I get on the phone, he likes to bite my legs. Hey, you gotta be cool for a minute, man. I'm talking. You just be cool. And so when I first got into radio, I was never gonna be in radio. And the truth is, so here, I'll have to give you some backstory, Ryan. A guy named Greg and I, who's my producer even today, used to work at record stores and a skateboard shop together. I went into being a firefighter and a paramedic, and he got into radio. And one day he goes, hey, you ought to come by and see this. So I was working 24 hours on, 48 hours off, and I started hanging out with him. And that's how I got into it. I never dreamed of being in radio. I was never, the music I really loved, all the metal and stuff, it just didn't show. And so it didn't really imprint with me. So when I got into radio finally, and I ended up getting a shot at doing a morning show, there was no preconceived notion. I honestly didn't know how to do it. I got thrown into it by a guy named Doug Sorensen, the late, great programmer Doug Sorensen, who brought me in from a promotions guy. I was doing it on the side and put me in middays. I was terrible. Then he put me in with a guy named Treetop Tyler, and we didn't even get along. He was definitely not looking for a partner, and it got forced on him. And he got another job, and there I was sitting in this weird room. I didn't really even know how to do the equipment. I didn't understand the overall picture. And somehow we muddled through, and it all kind of came from just telling the stories that you tell and being the person that you really are and liking the things that you like. And for whatever reason, it clicked, you know, like, and you've done this, right? You know, you're trying to figure out what an audience wants to hear. You do something, and all of a sudden all those lines light up. Bing, bing, bing. And you're like, hey, man, that was fun. And listeners are, you know, if they're the right caller, it's better than any guest you can get.
Well, what's funny is I see that whenever it's a topic that you don't expect to get a lot of calls, that's when the phone lines blow up.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it, man. And if it interests you, right, then you lay it out. And I find that, you know how it is. If it really does interest me, and I'm really curious, I think it's easy to sell because it's fun to listen to and it's fun to talk about. But I think to be a radio host, you better be curious. You better really go out and live, and you really better be curious about this world.
What are some things you are curious about, Johnny?
Effing everything, Ryan. I mean, dude, I have the most wicked ADHD. Like travel. It literally doesn't matter. I can get curious about anything. The stuff I love personally, I love that, you know, it's everything from space travel to haunted houses, from exploring other countries to animals to, you know, learning about why people are weird. I think people, as a rule, I think we're all so goddamn weird that it's the most fun ever just to dig into somebody. Like, how'd you get in? Like, what made you get into radio?
I'm from Chicago, so I grew up listening to all the shows in the 90s and 2000s.
Sure.
And, like, I didn't have TV from like 2001 to 2006 because my mom watched too much TV in the 90s when I was growing up. So we didn't get TV again until about 2007. So the radio in my room was what kind of got me into the news and that.
See, that's the weirdness. So did you, like, I didn't have a lot of friends. I always had like one good friend growing up, but I didn't have a bunch. I wasn't real popular. What about you?
Not popular whatsoever, bro.
Yeah, that's it, right? So you got to need to entertain and gain acceptance. That's all the stuff you got to figure out about yourself as we go on through this life, right? Like there's a reason we get on and show our ass and lay ourselves out for everybody because it feels good. And I think there's, I think most radio hosts, most good ones also have an empathetic streak. Like, what it's like to work hard. You know what it's like to not be the most popular kid. It's, you tend to have a little more understanding of the human condition, I think.
I noticed that the radio hosts that don't have any empathy, yeah, they can have a good run, but it ends quicker than the people that are nicer.
That's it. That's right. Look, I'm always weirded out when they call you a shock jock, and we definitely rub all over that stuff, and it's fun. And I like bawdy humor, and I like salty discussions, and I like just being human. But always punch up. You're right, being a dick, and those guys who don't have empathy for what it's like to be human, for everything from older people to just working hard people to tragedy to animals. If you don't have a heart and a soul, I mean, it'll show. And it'll show in the kind of way that people don't really like you.
Because the one thing I've noticed is Mike McVeigh spoke very well about you. Mojo, who I've hung out with at radio conventions, speaks well about you. Everybody speaks well about you, and it's because you're a nice guy. Like a lot of people, I feel like when they listen to your show and they hear you talk about sex and that, they just think you're going to be this dirtbag, and then it's like Johnny's really cool, and I've always respected that.
Well, thanks, man. But I mean, don't we all like sex? And that's the crazy thing, right? Like, I think we're all that. We're all good guys. I think we're all good human beings. If you catch us at the right moment, and it's not that I'm an exceptionally good person. I have an exceptionally cool job. So if somebody's hurt or somebody needs help, a car needs to be fixed, a home needs to be repaired, you need to find somebody a job. You have this medium that all you're doing is being the conduit. You're just a connection. I'm not giving the guy a job. I'm not fixing his house, but I know people who might. And if you can tell the story and you can make it real and you can make someone feel, man, you can move mountains. And again, nobody's going to call me when I die, wasn't he the best do-gooder of all time? But, it feels great to help people, man. I mean, it's again, when I was a kid, I liked it. I like it now. I think we all do. I think when you see happiness in someone's eyes, or you can right a wrong, or you can help someone who's had something hard go wrong with them, I mean, wouldn't every human being do that if you could do it? And it was just a matter of talking about it.
Yeah, I feel like the key is you have to be real. It just seems like everybody's always putting on this persona, like they're trying to be cool, and it's like you got to just be real.
Listen, I wasn't cool when I was a kid, and I ain't gonna get cool now. It's okay because again, none of us are. I think the best of us are super weirdos. And the weirder, the better. The people I've come to really love in this world, and the people I've been afforded friendships with, they're the same way. And I mean, from guys who are multimillionaires and superstars down to the hardest working, blue collar guys. It's that same thread of good weirdo. Like, you take one of the nicest people. So, let me drop a name. So Henry Winkler is a dear friend, and I love him with all my heart. He's a wonderful guy. But when he was a kid, he had dyslexia. His parents thought he was stupid. He was an outcast. He didn't know what was wrong with him. He was undiagnosed. He couldn't read, and he wanted to be an actor. So, he didn't know how to be cool. He was that outsider kind of weirdo guy. Once he got diagnosed, he'd had all this huge success. Now he writes, and I don't know if you know this, but he writes books for dyslexic kids so that they don't have to feel bad. He spends his time traveling across the country, school to school, when he's not doing Emmy award-winning shows like Barry. And he really cares, and he remembers what it was like to have his ass kicked by his own parents. And his parents used to have a German name that translated to dumb dog, and that's what they'd call him all the time.
What are some of your favorite memories from hanging out with him? Oh,
he's the kindest, sweetest, most generous dude you'd ever want to meet. the reason I got to know Henry, and it's such a hard thing for me to explain to you, but I'll try. So he was coming in for one of those World of Wheels type conventions where they sign autographs. I'm a super fan and have been since I was a kid. So is Jake on our show. And so we are talking about how much we love him. And there's this momentary exchange between Henry and I that we have on tape where I go, I'm going to go Saturday. Jake's like, I'm going to go Sunday. And he's like, hey, Johnny, question. And he's got that Henry voice. Johnny, question. Dinner, Saturday night. Now, I think he's asking me to go to dinner because he goes, dinner, Saturday night. And there's a millisecond pause, which sucks me in. And I go, yes. And he goes, what's a good restaurant? He never heard me say yes, and he never understood. I thought he asked me to go to dinner, but an entire goddamn city heard me. And you could hear me afterwards. I realized what had happened. In that next second, I go, oh, like this. And we just keep on talking. But the exchange was dinner, Saturday night, yes. What's a good restaurant? Oh, and it's so brutal that it got replayed 1,000 times that week leading up to him being in Kansas City. And then I started getting these phone messages from Henry. And it was him at the show going, hey, I guess we were supposed to meet for dinner, bud. And now I think he might be upset with me because you know how the telephone game works, right? Like I laughed at myself because I thought he asked me, and it was a funny thing to kick me in the balls over. But it blew up into such a thing. Every person that ran into him that weekend brought it up. And eventually it turned into a friendship. And he always knew that we weren't saying anything negative about him. He was the Fonz, for God's sake. And he ended up, we had dinner when he comes through town, and then we became like actual friends, and we stay in touch every week. And he's just one of the most genuinely kind, thoughtful, sweet, generous, superstar type human beings you could ever meet. I'm not kidding you a bit. I would fist fight a mother effer over Henry in a second. Like if someone were to step to him or in any way disparage him, I would whip an ass.
How crazy is it to think that you grew up watching him on TV and now he's one of your friends?
It completely freaks me out. I mean, I can tell you. So this 2 weeks ago, he came in with Comic-Con KC. They sold 75,000 tickets or so over 3 days. He asked me 2 weeks prior, he said, John, I'm going to be doing a panel. And so they do those big, if you've ever been to those Comic-Cons, you know, they'll fill 3,000 or 4,000 people inside one of those, the ballrooms that are separate from the Comic-Con area. And he goes, I'd like you to moderate the discussion. And I go, oh, that's an awfully kind thing. It's actually him, Anson Williams, and Don Most, Potsy, and Ralph Malph. And so here I am, instantly 8 years old again, as I'm walking up to do an intro and bring three of the biggest stars from that era up. And people are cheering, and I'm having an out-of-body experience thinking, how did you get here, dummy? And it just couldn't have been easier and more, he makes it so easy to just have a conversation. I know, Ryan, I mean, you ran into it. Like when you get a guest who you connect with, I mean, it's just, you forget you're even talking, right? You forget it's an interview.
There's a bit of a motivation, though, if it's the flip side and the guest sort of sucks. It's like, how do I make the most out of this, you know?
Always. Or they're hard. Like there's a great, and most people won't remember this name, but there's a comedian named Paul Mooney who passed a few years ago. Paul was a legend. He helped write Richard Pryor's Live on the Sunset Strip. If you ever saw the movie Bamboozled, he was in that. And Paul didn't like morning radio, disc jockeys, and I don't think he was all that fond of white people. And I say that with love. So it was my goal to win him over. He was known for coming into a show if he was playing a town, accepting the interview in the morning, walking in, throwing the headphones on, and putting a newspaper up in front of his face and talking on the mic. But just that.
Yeah.
And I made it my life's work. And it took 2 or 3 times of him in the studio, but we became real friends. And, you know, for me, it was about, you did the homework, you dug in, you brought up things he didn't think you'd know. And then he realized you're a real fan of comedy. And man, when he warmed up, incredible. Charlie Murphy was the exact same way. Charlie Murphy was hard. But man, when he decided you were okay, God damn, man, he'd tell you stuff about him and Eddie's upbringing that were just phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, he was a good actor too. I believe he had a few scenes in Ray Donovan in the middle of that series.
Yeah, no, Charlie really came into his own. He wrote a book called The Making of a Stand-Up Guy. You know, and he came from behind Eddie's shadow. And Charlie got in some trouble, man. I mean, Charlie was no punk. Charlie told a story about one time when Eddie was just become a superstar and a bunch of sycophants were hanging out. And they were all at Eddie's house. And all these, you know, these sucklefish were kind of around. And one of them tried to kind of get between he and his brother during a discussion. You could tell he was trying to kind of push Charlie out. And Charlie got pissed off, went upstairs and grabbed a gun and shoved it in the guy's mouth and told him, if you think you're going to get between my brother and I, it's time for you to leave. And I'm like, Charlie, I don't know that you should tell the story on the air anymore about you pushing guns in people's mouths. But he was something else, man. When he passed, he was another guy. I was certainly very sad to see him leave this earth. He was something else.
So I want to ask you, by the way, have you ever thought about writing a book?
Yeah, people have asked me that because I can tell you, like, the stories, I mean, they border on, we used to call them true lies because they're 100% true. But when you tell somebody, they go, yeah, you just know they're going, you're a liar. You're full of ass. Like, that didn't happen that way. And it all happened that way. And it gets weird. Trust me, we could spend hours getting weird. It's one of my best friends in the world for 30 years has been a guy named Jesse James Dupree. Now, not everybody, if you're into rock and into Southern metal and stuff, you know he's from a band called Jackal. And he's done solo records, and Jackal still tours, and we were both part of that Full Throttle Saloon TV show. But Jesse and I met when I first got in the business, and he was so cool to me. We're just kindred spirits. He grew up just poor white trash, and so did I. And some of the stories that he and I have gotten into are some of the goddamnest things. You would swear to God, I'm just lying to you.
What is like the one you want to say? One that's maybe not too edgy, but pretty edgy.
You know what? Let me think edgy stuff. Well, one time, so this is in 1997 or 8, we decided the Kansas City St. Patrick's Day Parade used to pull, I don't know, a couple 100,000 people. And Jackal had a new record, and they were coming in to play, and we built a float, and they were going to play down the parade route. Now, as it starts, the entire parade decides to blow ranks, and it starts running down Main Street. Now, there's a couple 100,000 people for the next couple miles, and all you see is once a kid started running down the street towards the music, we had just started the parade. And then everybody broke ranks, and the cops lost their mind. And we were with the U.S. Army. We had a U.S. Army flatbed. We had a military truck. We had officers with us. Like it was a proper setup with a full PA system and a generator truck. And these cops just shut the whole thing down 3 blocks into the parade near Riot, and we get shoved off. So that turns into kind of a debacle during the day. They were playing a place, 1,000-seater Roadhouse Rubies that night. The frustration of 3 days of preparation, getting blown out of the parade, turned into a pretty big party before, during, and after the show. There may have been some drugs involved with me,
yeah.
And I left with the band. And so I didn't go to work. I passed out on the tour bus. I wake up in the morning, and I'm in a terrible spot physically. We're in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I will say this gently. Do you remember We're an American Band, the song?
Sort of.
Well, there was a spot in it, and a super groupie named Sweet Sweet Connie, and it said, "We're an American band. Last night, Little Rock, Sweet Connie was doing her act." Sweet Connie's a real person. Sweet Connie Hamsey is known as a super groupie. She's written a couple books. Jesse said he had gotten off the bus. He was getting blown up from the radio station because I had disappeared. My boss was yelling about getting back on an airplane. And he said he walked on the bus. Somebody let Connie Hamsey on, and she was pushing up on me, and I was just coming back into consciousness when he swatted her off and said, "Connie, down, damn it." I can't tell you the rest, but that's literally one instance out of 100 that it's impossible to describe. I ended up with him and Brian Johnson at a Four Seasons hotel in Paris, France after an 80,000 person show one night.
It sort of feels like you're pretty lucky that for the most part of your life there hasn't been smartphones.
Yes. Dude, we've talked about that so many times that there was no photographs of anything. But I'll tell you, and keeping it real, and again, in deference to your audience and being gentle with everything, I've never lied about how I grew up. I grew up and I experimented with drugs, and I've been arrested when I was younger, and nothing terrible, just, simple disorderly conduct, never a victim crime. And just, I grew up in a pretty different kind of family. And, but it's just, we all did, right? None of our families were normal. None of our families are perfect. And if we just lay it out on the table, the secrets die in the light of day, and everybody kind of realizes we're all the same.
What was the weirdest part about your family?
Wow, let's start with that. So I got 3 brothers. My older brother got in some trouble when we were kids, and he had to go to jail. He had to go to juvie. He climbed up on the local Olathe Suzuki motorcycle shop. It's a pretty basic but kind of brilliant plan. For whatever reason, he thought there'll be a hatch on top, and sure enough, there was. He climbed up a ladder, went through the top of the building, let himself down into the showroom. He carried a rock with him, threw it through the window, and drove a motorcycle out, a dirt bike. And he kept that dirt bike hidden in the woods till a cop stopped him 3-4 weeks later and realized when they ran the number, it was a stolen motorcycle, and bam, my brother is off to juvenile home. So like that kind of a thing, like, you know how it is when you're in junior high school and your brother goes to jail and it makes the news, you're that family suddenly. Now you are like the questionable family. And my mom and dad were wonderful people, but my mom came from England. He met her when she was, and this is the crazy part. So my dad's in the military, in Air Force, in this little bitty town in Norwich, England, meets my mom. You can drink in the bars pretty young there. But he doesn't realize my mom is only like, she's in the bar, 15 or 16 years old. And I come to find, I go, hold on, you married mom when she was 16 and you were 21, Dad? I go, technically you're kind of a pedophile. And my mom, of course, she's English. It was different days, John. Those were different days. And I'm like, yeah, okay, all right. So yeah, as you can tell, the beginnings were just weird all the way across the board.
Yeah, that is really weird. My family is my dad passed from leukemia 10 years ago, but he was a 29-year-old virgin, and my mom was 36, and my mom only had sex with one other guy prior to him, and I 100% believe that because she's super religious. And they got married after 1 year. It was a bizarre marriage. Well,
listen, think about it. They got married after 1 year because she'd never, and she was 36, so she probably, we all want love, right?
Yeah.
And how old was your dad? He was a virgin, you said?
Yeah, he was 29.
Yeah, he was ready to meet someone. He was like, what gets us up in the morning, right? Like, the reason we all go to work, the reason we try hard, a lot of it is we want to attract somebody. We want to be the kind of person that can attract a girl who, or a guy, whatever, and give us love. Otherwise, I'd be perfectly content living under a bridge, eating beans out of a can. If you took away all of my need for love or sex or whatever, I'm pretty sure I could live in a tent by myself.
I'm sort of the same way. And you got to remember, I grew up in the dating app generation, so it's been very easy for me.
Yeah. And I don't think I could do it. I have that thing. I'm terrified. Like, I hate rejection.
Oh, like, it's the worst. Johnny, you'll be talking to someone on like Snapchat or on the app and they just unfriend you and you go to look at the message and they're no longer there. It's the weirdest feeling.
It's a terrible feeling. And then you're like, oh. And again, if you grew up like you and I, like, you weren't super popular, we never developed that exterior. So, that's kind of the great thing about radio is you share a life. And for 30 years, I've gotten to do this now in this town, which, as you know, that's absurd. Most guys, the best shows in the world, have to move once in a while. But for whatever reason, this city decided to go ahead and let me keep going, and we managed to keep it, the entire show, nonstop on the same station for 30 years. And it's the only on-air job I've ever had.
What is it like getting fined by the FCC?
Super scary. When that happened, I didn't, for whatever reason, I was pretty young. I didn't think this was going to be the end of my career. But it came down in 1 week. We made the front page of the news for a thing we've been doing for a number of years. We still do it, called Hope for the Holidays. And it's a peer-to-peer helping program. It's just, hold on. Okay, so I'll tell you about that. So we made the front page for some good things we had done. Less than a week later, we made the front page of the paper for a $225,000 per market FCC fund. And the day it came out, I just happened to literally be going on vacation and even leaving the country. But I remember going through Kansas International Airport, taking 2 Kansas City Stars, one to save and one to read. And it was a combination. I was afraid, and somehow, and I don't even know if I should admit this to anybody, strangely proud of myself, because I made the front page, and it was a pretty, again, we're number 1 rated. So the government says you're dirty. The city I live in didn't. We were, if FCC is supposed to uphold civil standards, society standards, right? Like that's what they're trying to protect. Well, my argument would be, if this is a number 1 radio show above all others in the market, aren't we the norm? Like, didn't we just set the new norm? I mean, if we're the majority. By the way, they're going to accept that, and they still fine you $225,000.
Now, what is the payment like? Do you have to pay it, or did the company pay it? The
company does. And so to this day, I don't even know if the payment even went through. It just goes into endless appeals.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of times when this happened to shows like you or Opie and Anthony or Stern, it feels like, because I've read about it online, it was like these nerds that were recording shows and just sending it to the FCC. Isn't that kind of what happened? Who was it?
No, it was a competitor.
Oh, that's not good.
No, so what they'd learned, and listen, I don't fault them. We definitely violated the FCC code on a fairly consistent basis by their, and the FCC code, it's pretty gray. And it's, when it's pandering and titillating. Look, I don't know what makes you sexually excited. I don't think that's up to me. I can't, if I talk about, whatever, and you happen to become sexually excited, well, why am I to blame? Anyway, they knew this. So they would literally take a tape it every day, what they felt were violations. They would transcribe it, type it, submit the tape of it and the transcription to the FCC. And I have a friend of the FCC who let me know that came in a lot of times before they finally picked up one and ran with it.
Was there a part of you, whenever you would get in trouble with this, that you thought about quitting, or did it not bother you that much?
Oh, no, I never thought about quitting, ever. No, dude, I've got that sick problem. Like when I was a kid, I love that middle finger to the man. There's something that has been a part of my genetic code, whether it's rebelliousness or classism. I don't know what it is. But when someone goes, you're not good enough, or you're not the way we think you should be, you shouldn't tell these stories. And again, I can't stress this enough to you, Ryan. Like we don't punch down, man. We don't make fun of people because of their religion. And this isn't something new because I'm woke. We never punch down on somebody's sexuality or somebody's skin color or their religion or whatever. That was, you were less than, you were poor, you were mentally incapacitated, whatever it was. But that's not who we went after. We skewered sacred cows. We went after people and made fun of things that made people's eyes pop open a little bit. And that's a deep rooted part of me, man. It can definitely be self-destructive if you let it get away from you too far.
What do you think about the Radio Hall of Fame, and would it mean anything to you to make it?
At one time it did, Ryan. When my father was still alive, and you'll get this, and I was nominated years ago. I was like, no, my dad was still alive, and it was before he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And because I'm a high school dropout, and you never get over wanting to make your father proud of you. I don't care how old you get.
Oh, for sure.
It's just part of your deal. And had I been asked to go and gotten past the nomination, I would have loved to have flown my father there for that day. But once my mom and dad passed, sure, it would be, of course, an incredible honor. But it doesn't mean as much as it would have been.
Yeah, I give mixed answers when I ask radio hosts. Like some really care and some are like, whatever.
Well, the ones who go, whatever. It's because none of us are going to get in. Like I'm not getting in. I don't network enough, man. Because it's just like an Oscar. To get nominated, you got to be able to put in the work, and we've put in the work. But I also don't network enough. The people that I think have to vote aren't in my Rolodex. They're not in my phone. Almost all my friends are regular people. But that's how the show has stayed alive. You can choose in radio to surround yourself with radio, and then all you'll know is radio, and that's all you'll talk about. Or you can go out and live and then go talk about your life.
Have you ever been to a morning show boot camp? Because I've been to like 6 of them.
Dude, I used to go to Kid Craddock's when I was first starting out because it seemed like a good idea, and they made me pay for it myself. And I will tell you, A, he was an ace human being.
Yes.
And B, I got to sit next to the great Bob Rivers. And
Legend.
He was incredible. Legend. And I really did. I wrote down everything. But because when I tell you, we got into this, I didn't know the basics of it. And so, yeah, man, it talks to you. All of a sudden you learn about how you work phoners, how you use topic starters, how you can, you live through other people's experience. Instead of talking to some chucklehead consultant, which I never believe in, you're talking to other real shows, and they can tell you, hey, this is what worked for us in this context. And that's real value. Man, that's the only thing I would tell you for a morning show talent or any talent. Man, go hear it from the people who do it. Do not take advice from consultants. If those chowderheads could do it, they would have a better job and be off at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I've always thought about that. Like all these radio consultants and people that write these like blogs online. I'm like, if you know everything, why don't you have a job?
Yeah. It's like the guys who tell you how to win all your money gambling. You're like, well, why aren't you gambling then? You're like, hey, trust me, those consultants, and there's some good ones out there who I've gotten really good advice from over the years, but it's never been anything to do with how to run the show. It was more of a situational thing.
So you've been in KC for a long time, and I know you're a Chiefs fan. What do you think about Travis Kelce and Swift?
Oh, they're real. That's real. At least from a human being standpoint, I think anybody can see that. That guy, he was kind of a goony guy, right? When he first got here. And then you watched him grow, and of course he and Patrick Mahomes. And for the record, you live here. Of course I root for the Chiefs. But football, sports, not my thing. That's always been a running joke on the show is, everybody in this town lives for sports. And I, of course, root for us. And I've got friends in the game, but I never watch it until we get to the playoffs. I will tell you, I'm a fair weather fan all the way through.
Me too.
And again, I'm a fair weather everything, Ryan. I want to eat a steak, but I don't want to raise that cow or kill the cow.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I could never do that.
No, man. I'm a fair weather fan. You're a fair weather fan. Yes, of course I am. Yes, I wish we could go right to me dating and getting to that really fun sleepover part with a girl without all the stuff before it. But it doesn't really work that way. But it's, I'm a fair weather everything. I'd like it to be as easy as possible. I enjoy the Super Bowl, the playoffs, the wins, but I definitely don't want to sit through a bunch of losses.
Johnny, how can people find your show?
You can go to the Odyssey app, or you can also find us on TuneIn. Go to JohnnyDareMorningShow.com. You can find me on Johnny Dare Pick on Instagram. Find us on Facebook, and you can go through all that. Ryan, so hey, listen, before you go, let me know about you, man, because this is our first time getting to chat.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you got into radio?
I was 18. I did a community college show, and I got kicked off because there wasn't a general manager at the point, so I just snuck on and did 6 months. And this is in 2013. This is in 2013 awesome. when the new pope was elected, and I said, "Who cares?" And I went on a rant about religion, and my new boss was Roman Catholic. So then I got kicked off and then flunked out of college. So then I went to the morning show boot camp in 2013, and they told me I had to go to a radio school. So I went to a trade school for a year. And then I worked for Rover in Cleveland. And then I worked for 102.5 The Bone for 7 years and just kind of reached my peak there. So now you'll never believe it. During the day, my first full-time job, I produce conservative radio.
Dude, My friend Chuck Armstrong, who works for Loudwire, does Loudwire Nights.
Yeah.
Super great guy. Did Sean Hannity's radio show in New York City just a few years ago.
Dude, it's
he
super.
He was a producer for him. He said it was super interesting, man.
It's super professional. You learn a lot about the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I may not be the most conservative guy, but listen, if you're a nice guy, and he said Sean Hannity always treated him well, and my buddy Chuck's a great guy. If you ever run across him, he works for Town Square, and he's just a great human. He just moved back to Kansas City with his family, but he still does Loudwire Nights, that syndicated show. So then you're working and you're doing conservative radio. How do you go through all that when if your opinions don't jive?
I just don't really talk about my job on my podcast, and I don't have it on my social media. So I keep it private.
Yeah, no, and I think not everything is for every avenue.
Yeah.
You know?
I definitely have cleaned up my show a little bit, but I just don't have it on my LinkedIn. I don't have it on my Facebook. I don't name drop it if I'm emailing people. It's not just a job that pays my bills, but I just keep it private because I care so much about it that I just keep it. I just keep it separate.
Hey, to that same point, my girlfriend, who I've had for 15 years, is only known on the show as Sassy Von Fancy Pants. But it's not to be cute. She doesn't appear. She doesn't talk. But it's going to come up. But I don't want to involve her in my show because I want that to be separate. I want it to be her and I.
Well, also, when I've been on the radio, I've been in 2 relationships that were pretty long-term and real. And I told the whole world in Tampa Bay and Cleveland about my dating life. And I don't regret it because it made for good radio, but I'm not doing it again because when you break up with the person, then everybody asks where they're at. Why aren't they in a selfie? Why aren't you posting them anymore? And it's like, well, that's what you get for telling hundreds of thousands of people about who you're dating.
Ryan, that is it. But you know what? I find some comfort in that because when it does end, if it does, then a good person will also, if they feel like they know you through the radio and that you're friends, they go, hey, man, I'm sorry, Ryan, and I know that sucks. I did it too. And, to me, that's kind of comforting as well.
This has been a very comforting interview. I was a little nervous to interview you because I've just been listening to you forever, but you are as real as everyone says you are. Well,
I mean, you know why? I'm not a good actor. You got to be who you are.
Yeah, I feel that for sure.
Who you are, man. Yeah. It's, but I mean, listen, you can survive in this business. You know, when I got to get hard with somebody, and it's never moments like this. It's never a listener. It's almost always your own world, right? Like it's a manager, it's a contract negotiation, it's a salesperson where you go, hey, I'm not going to compromise what I do to make your job easier. I'm a ratings generator, which hopefully turns to revenue, but none of it is we're not going to break the rules that we have to play by. And so, I definitely have a reputation for being a bit uncompromising in that fashion, but that's how we lasted 30 years, man. Keep the product pure. Do it for the right reasons. Don't let people put their fingers in it.
Oh, yeah. That's not the time to use your fingers.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's it. But you got to do it. Ryan, like we're the masters of whatever we do or don't do, whatever we get or don't get, because there's no school. This, like nobody tells you how to do it. They expect you to walk in and make radio.
I learned more from being in radio than the radio school I went to.
That's it. That's right. And you are going to control everything you do in the sense of if your brain can create, if you can form a show that is appealing to listeners and makes them feel good and makes them feel a part of something and just draws them in, right? Then you will benefit. But if you let somebody else compromise that, then you only have yourself to blame, man. We live by that sword and die by it.
Well, Johnny, you're an absolute legend, and it's been a blast having you on Hoppe Hour. Thank you so much, bro.
Man, I've really enjoyed it, Ryan. I hope we get to do it again.
Dude, whenever you are free, I would love to have you on as a co-host, go over the news and not just talk about our lives. You're very talented, bro. I've been a big fan forever.
I appreciate you, man. I can't wait to listen to more of it, and I will take you up on that. I'm not kidding, Ryan. I really will.
If you're ever in Tampa as well, hit me up. I've been here for 10 years, and I know the perfect places to go to.
Excellent, man. I without a doubt will. I got your number, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnny.